Happy New Year, my beautiful motorheads. Welcome to Féroce, where we inspire you to live fiercely. I'm your host, Annick. Over the holidays, I've been traveling, and unfortunately, it hasn't been by motorcycle. It's actually snowing right now, and the weather's been crazy. I also don't own currently a motorcycle that could make a cross-country trip in the middle of winter. So, that being said, I spent a lot of time behind the wheel driving, and as happens is that once we are on a road trip, your mind starts to wander and you start to think about things and contemplate what 2024 was for me and what 2025 will be for me. Always during this time of year, I like to set intentions and goals. So in this episode, I would like to cover some of my thoughts about 2024 and what some of my motorcycle goals are in 2025. And I hope that you will also share in the comments below what your goals are for 2025 riding season. Once I turned off the audiobook I was listening to and the podcast, I decided to spend at least an hour just in silence driving. And it's hard sometimes, like we don't give ourselves that kind of space to just sit and think. Like there's so much that's coming at us, whether it's social media or people in our lives needing things. It's one of those few times where you actually can just be alone and not have to respond to anybody because you're driving. In episode 3, John Flores brought up during our discussion that we had had dinner, it was probably like 25 years ago, and he had recounted a story that I had a set of 15 goals that I had written down for the year and accomplished most of them. That doesn't always happen. I have been goal setting for at least 25, 30 years, and it's just something that I do every year. And for me, it's kind of a rite of passage of kind of assessing what the year has been like and what I would like the future year to be. There have been years where when things weren't going so well in my life, I didn't do the list and I couldn't really be bothered by it. I didn't care. I think it had to do more with my mood and just not being able to be in a place where I could see hope and positivity in the future. Thankfully, that's not how things are now. And I find that for this time of year when things are a little bit calmer in the winter, and especially in the space between Christmas and New Year's, that it's a great time to just take a little bit of space for yourself and to write down what you want to accomplish in 2025. And it's not so much for me about making resolutions or making these big changes or being like, new year, new me, or anything like that. It's more about taking agency and like how I want to live my life in the next year. And I think that for me, what has worked really well is that when I look through and contemplate what the previous year did for me, like 2024, it gives me an opportunity to assess, did this work or did this not work? Would I have liked to have done this better? Or do I think that, something that was important to me at the beginning of 2024 is now not so important to me? And during this every year, I roll over some of the goals that maybe I haven't reached or some things that I liked to do and want to continue to do. When I do this goal setting, I actually put this in the journal. So it's easy for me to go back. And I actually break it up into categories. And this past year's categories for me was creativity, money, family, I have to look at my list, home, health, love, and motorcycles. Today, I want to talk to you about what some of my motorcycle goals are, because I think that it would be fun to share that collectively, especially in the comments, and to kind of see what everybody is deciding to do, but also be inspired by like some of the things we haven't thought about that maybe we could do. The reason why I think it's important to do this is that when we live a life of intention, it's more likely to go our way than to live a life where we are just reacting to things that happen outside of us. And as we all know, these days, like anything can happen outside of us. And I think that when we especially put thought to paper, handwritten, there's a connection that's made where you really ingrain what you're feeling and what your actual goals are. The other part to putting things on paper is that you think you're going to remember. Like I was driving, I was like, yeah, I got 10 things I want to do. And then when I was done and I actually stopped at a gas station, I was going to write them down. Like I couldn't remember 3 or 4 of them. So I only really remembered half of what I was thinking. And I had to take the time and write it down so that I actually wouldn't forget, right? So first I want to recap some of the highlights for me that happened in 2024. And the biggest thing is that after 6 years of wanting to start this podcast, I actually started it. And it's been great. It's been nothing that I expected. I'm about 3 months in. I've learned so much about editing, about interviewing people, all of it. So that's been really exciting. And I have had this vision for Féroce, again, for 6 years. And going back to the goals thing is like, sometimes you can set these intentions, but life happens. And for 6 years, life happened. We had a pandemic. We had illness in the family. jobs that didn't work out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This big dream of mine kept getting pushed aside until it was the right time. And 2024 was the right time, and I got to start this podcast. The other great thing that happened in 2024, and again, I'm sharing all the motorcycle related things because it's appropriate to this podcast. 2024 was great for riding. Not every year has worked out really well for being a good riding season. Like there's just some years where you just don't put a lot of miles in, or again, life happens. Or there have been a couple of years where like I didn't feel like my riding skills were that good, or like I was just off for some reason. But 2024 was spectacular. I only put 9,000 miles on my car, which means the rest were motorcycle miles. And I don't keep track of that because I think over the season, I was fortunate to be able to test ride a lot of motorcycles. So I think I might have been on maybe 6 to 10 different bikes. So I have no idea how much mileage I did. It's not really important to me. What's important to me is that I got to spend time riding, and I did it in every format. It wasn't just doing weekend warrior rides. It was just riding as a daily commuter, trying to just put as many miles locally on the bike as well. And it was just a great season. So much fun. And in addition to that, like I was saying, like there's some years where you feel like maybe your riding's off. Well, 2024 was a great riding season for me. I felt really good on the bike. I felt nimble. Just felt really good. And it made it a lot more fun to ride because it is when you're having a good riding season, right? And I didn't actually ride with too many people. So it was definitely, I've talked about this before, it was for me lone wolf riding season, and I'm okay with that. And maybe next year that'll be different. Here's the part that I really wanted to share with you, which is my 2025 goals. And I would love to, like I said, have everybody inspire each other by what their goals are. So if you feel inclined to share, please put in the comments what some of your goals might be, like your top 1 or 2 goals for the season. The number one thing for me, which is that this podcast is obviously related to motorcycling, and I want to grow the podcast. So that's a big goal for me, not only just with subscribers and followers, which is great, and please like and subscribe. But also what I want to do is I really want to grow this podcast in creativity and the opportunities of how I can present information to you and interact more with the audience. And I want to continue doing the interviews, which I think are really great and expose a lot of motorcyclists to our community. I'd like to take this time to just say thank you so much to all of you who have donated to Buy Me a Coffee. It's in the show descriptions, but basically you can make a donation towards the show. And I have to say thank you. Thank you. Not only does it help me defray the costs of producing the show, but it also will give me the opportunity in 2025 to, again, be more creative and to do things a little bit differently. Surprisingly, I have shot all of this on an iPhone 13. So one of my goals for 2025 is to actually buy a small action cam so I can kind of change how I'm videoing and maybe do some onboard motorcycle riding shots, which I think would be fun. And I always enjoy watching them, so I think that you guys would as well. Again, your dollars, however you donate, really does help this channel and the show. I would love to see this grow. Thank you to anybody who has donated. It means the world to me. Another goal I have for 2025, besides growing Féroce, is that I would like to buy a new motorcycle. I don't know what that's going to be yet, and I'm going to have to figure out whether I can financially make it work or not. I would like to buy something that's a little bit bigger. I test ride a bunch of motorcycles, so it gives me the opportunity to just ride things and take them on longer trips. So it hasn't been so relevant that I own a bigger bike. I actually sold most of my bigger bikes just because they weren't the right fit. And now I just have what I call my baby bike, which is my daily commuter, which is a 2013 Yamaha XT250. Nothing fancy, nothing special. After I ride it, the max I can do, the max I've done on that bike is 300 miles, and it's a little bit brutal. So it would be nice to be on something a little bit more appropriate for long distance riding on the road. It might be an ADV bike, but it might, where my heart always really goes to is a sport bike. And sometimes not the most practical. There's a lot of standard options that can be the best of both worlds, both sporty and more upright positioning and good for long distances. I'm challenged by my height, so it's hard for me to find a motorcycle that fits appropriately. The third thing I'd like to do is at least one overnight trip. Again, going with that long distance. I just want to take longer street rides. I'd also like to attend at least one moto event, if not 2, meaning like a rally or a show. I'm considering going to the AIM Expo in Las Vegas, but I'm not sure that that's going to work out, which is coming up in February. But I also would be interested in going to see some of the custom motorcycle shows. I would also like to present at one of the motorcycle events, a public speaking engagement, basically. If anybody knows of one who's looking for speakers, let me know. In the health arena, I would like to work on my mobility. And one of the things that's becoming a little bit more challenging as I get older is having the flexibility of my body to be able to be on a bike. So health and wellness has always been super important to me, along with this goal setting, can you not tell? So one, I want to keep my body healthy, but two, what I have realized is that my mobility within my hips, knees, and ankles has been decreasing, which has made it difficult for me to sit for a certain number of hours on a motorcycle. I want to focus on getting all that working better so that riding a motorcycle won't be as painful. I also have it on here to take a class because I always think that it's important to work on your skill set no matter what, no matter how many years you've been riding, there's something that you can learn. So this year I'm going to take an ADV class with Moto Vermont, which I'm very much looking forward to. I've heard great things about them, so that should be super fun, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to take it on my own XT because it would be nice to just be able to apply the skills directly to my specific motorcycle. And lastly, I would like to upgrade some of my gear this year. I currently wear a lot of pieces that I was given to test out by different manufacturers, and that's fun and awesome, but it could be a little bit different than like what I would personally wear. Sometimes when you get these pieces from the manufacturers, they kind of give you the odd colors that maybe aren't selling. As you can tell, I'm a little bit particular about, how I present. So I would just like to choose things that are maybe more in line with my personality and my aesthetic. I'm very aesthetic driven because I'm a designer by trade. So it's very hard for me not to look at things and look at the whole package. And I love when people match their gear to their bike. It's just something that brings me great joy. And I love gear. And there's certain pieces that I have had my eye on for a while that I would like to try. So that's going to be more putting my own dollars towards testing these pieces, unless, of course, a manufacturer allows me to test something. But I would just like to be a little bit more intentional and specific about the gear that I'm buying, which will probably also be tied into whatever motorcycle I end up buying so that it makes sense, because it's always goofy to wear ADV boots on a sport bike. Doesn't really fit, I wanted to keep today short and sweet because I know that after the holidays, we just kind of want to ease into the new year. But I wanted to share my goals. And like I said, I would love for you to also share your goals for this year. And let's inspire each other, because maybe, you might write something and I might be like, yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't even think about it. I would love to go to that rally or that show or something like that. So I think that would be really cool. And here's to a great 2025. Let's all enter it in good health and spirit and have some really great motorcycle adventures in this year. I think it'll be really fun. I'm very much looking forward to it. And I would love to be able to meet some of you on the road this year. And as always, ride smart. Ciao. As a side note, do you like the hat? One of my siblings was wearing it over Christmas and everybody thought it looked better on me, so I got the hat. Spoken like a true younger sibling, right?